Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. My name is Emmanuel Jenkins. I am the Community Relations Officer for the Delaware Developmental Disabilities Council. If you are new to our channel, make sure you subscribe. And if you are back for a second or third or fourth time, make sure you like this video and make sure that you all ring the bell. Ring the bell so you never miss an episode of Let's Talk About It. Today, I am excited. I'm always excited when I do this, but I'm super excited because we have a monumental election coming up on November the 5th, not only for this nation, but for our states. And today I get the pleasure of having a conversation with one of the candidates who is running for governor of the great state of Delaware. Today I'm here with Mr. Matt Meyer. Matt, thank you for joining us today. You are on mute, sir. He's so excited he
Yeah,
forgot
thanks,
to call
Emmanuel. Sorry
you.
about that. Yeah, I got so excited. I kept hitting the mute button. I hit it so many times. I was unmuted. It's great to be here, Emmanuel. Your work. I'm really here for one reason, because of your leadership in the community. You not only are a leader at the Delaware Development Disabilities Council. You not only serve on so many boards and commission, but you saw issues in the community and you started We Stand for something. And I wish especially this election time, I wish everybody could say they stood for something. So when Emmanuel called and said, let's talk about it, everyone wants to talk about it now. We're a few days till the election. Early voting is open. You can go and vote now. But when Emmanuel says, let's talk about it, I say, okay, Emmanuel, let's talk about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. So we're gonna get right into our conversation because you are in the middle of a race, and I don't want to hold any man up in the middle of a race. So I want to get right into our conversation. And the first uh, uh, topic that I want to discuss with you today is uh, your long-term vision. The term of the governor is quite long, so we want to know what your vision is when it comes to accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities. So meaning like accessible documents and making sure that structures are accessible. But what's your long vision for that when it comes to the great state of Delaware?
So I appreciate it, Emmanuel. The first thing I want Delawareans to understand is that when I was in high school, I did community service at a place called the Bush School, which still exists as part of the Brandywine School District. And as a 10th, 11th, 12th grader, I worked with kids with autism. And for me, that was a dramatic learning experience for me. Just interacting with kids. It was interesting, to be honest, Emmanuel. When I started working at the Bush School, I still remember it like it was yesterday. I felt really sorry for these kids. Um, but the more I worked with them, I kind of admired them a little bit. They were kids that were resilient, that had endured and had a different perspective on things, often a much more positive perspective than able-bodied and other able children with other abilities. So I just learned to just step back and look. That's one thing. And another thing I learned was the tremendous sacrifices that families make. Tremendous sacrifices for the loved ones, and how we all have a responsibility, no matter what family you're from or what corner of the city, county, or state you're from. We all have an obligation to give and support not just individuals with disabilities, but their families, who often are working second jobs or doing great driving up and down the state or up to Philly and back to help support their loved ones. So listen, my long-term vision is to ensure that Delaware is a state where individuals with disabilities are fully included in every aspect of society, whether that's education, employment, housing, transportation. I want to foster a culture of accessibility where state agencies, private businesses and communities view inclusion as the norm, not the exception. This means creating a Delaware where physical spaces are accessible, technology is inclusive, and individuals with disabilities have the supports they need to live independently and thrive in the community. I think it can only be achieved. I can't do it alone. It can only be achieved through partnership with advocacy organizations like We Stand for Something, partnership with disability experts who understand a lot more of the details of things we can do than I do, and a commitment to enforcing existing laws. There are a lot of laws on the books that protect disabled individuals, both federally and in our state, that I think aren't enforced as much as they could or should. And we need to look at those, understand them, and set new standards where it's needed.
Matt, hope you don't mind me calling you Matt, because by now I consider you a friend. So we're just gonna cut
As long as I can call you Emmanuel. Hey,
the
if you call me Matt, that's a lot better than what a lot of people call me. So I'm good with that.
But and that was one question, and you touched on every last other question I got. You talked about transportation, you talked about counseling, all these different things, and you mentioned partnerships, and one of the questions I got was how will you ensure that disability organizations, individuals with disabilities are at the table to come up with policy, procedure, also known as legislation? How will you ensure that people like myself and agencies like the DD Council, the Delaware Development and Disabilities Council, as part of that work?
Look, it goes to the core of who I am and who I think we are. I believe policy should be shaped with input from those who are most affected by them. That's true of everything. When we're making education policy, we should include students. We should include teachers in making those policies. Anytime we're talking about anything involving people with disabilities, we should include people with disabilities who often are in a system that in some ways is working for them and in other ways is not. So I'll ensure that people with disabilities advocacy organization experts are at the table when it comes to crafting legislation, creating policy, and also implementing those policies. And I think it's important that there be individuals with disabilities who are in our administration. So it's not just me listening to you, but it's us listening to each other. And so that's the level of inclusion I strive to achieve. It'll be a hallmark of our administration because I believe government is ultimately strongest when it reflects the diversity and input of all our citizens. Again, it shouldn't be you coming to me. It should be us reflecting together and coming up with better solutions for a better tomorrow for all of us.
And I like how you stated it, that it should be, instead of me coming to you or you coming to us, but we should really be coming together to
Mm-hmm.
to foster, and the council and other organizations have done some really good things with the previous administration. And we would hate to lose that momentum. Regardless of who's in office,
Absolutely.
we will always need that partnership, because me being a Delawarean, and you being a Delawarean, that should be enough commonality for us to be invited to the table. But also, we really want to change the view or the paradigm, if you will, of we don't want to just be invited to the table for quote unquote disability legislation. We want to be invited for all legislation, because every legislation affects all of us. So I think we have done a really good job with, creating the idea that no matter what this piece of legislation is about, we need to hear from people with disabilities and their families, because they are Delawareans and they will be affected by it, regardless if it screams disability or not. So I appreciate you for sharing that. Um, let's talk about housing for a moment. You know, people keep saying, and we keep saying the housing crisis. What's your plan to improve affordable, accessible housing for individuals with disabilities and their families in the great state of Delaware?
What has been the largest and most comprehensive project in the last 5 years in Delaware to provide affordable, accessible, safe housing to those Delawareans who are most vulnerable with Delawareans? What's been the single biggest projects? I would argue that certainly one of the biggest projects, if not the biggest, has been something called the Hope Center. 4 years ago, as county executive, which the role I still hold, we made the decision and got a lot of criticism for it at the time for buying one of our state's largest hotels and turning it into emergency accessible housing for all people. It's accessible for people with physical disabilities. It's accessible with people with mental, behavioral, emotional disabilities. To date, over 4,300 Delawareans have spent at least one night there. Nearly 600 families have gone from chronic homelessness or housing insecurity into permanent stable housing outside of the facility. We're proud of our accomplishment and we're looking to expand on it statewide. Housing is a top priority for our administration. We must build more accessible and affordable housing while also allowing for modifications to existing homes to accommodate people with disabilities. If you could imagine somebody comes up with the money to expand their home to make it more hospitable and safer for a family member with disabilities, and then they run into all sorts of regulatory problems doing that. We got to make sure that that we can quickly and safely allow modifications to existing homes. Zoning reform is also part of it, enabling individuals to live independently within their communities. Again, inclusion as a basic core principle. We also need strong rental protection so people with disabilities are not unfairly denied housing or face unfair evictions. Emmanuel, I know, like me, you have a lot of stories of individuals with disabilities who were unfairly evicted, in part either directly or indirectly because of their because of their disability. Our housing plan specifically calls for more affordable and accessible options for people with disabilities. I'm committing to ensuring that they have access to safe, suitable housing that promotes independent living. So that's really where we're headed in terms of affordable housing for individuals with disabilities under the Meyer administration.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And you're right. You're right. I have tons of stories of that, but I also got personal stories. You know, about 4 years ago, my family and I were homeless, and there are levels to homelessness. But it happened. It happened, and it happened because I decided to have a career instead of a job. But I still needed my services. I still needed those things to thrive. And because I made the decision to be a productive member of society, that's what ultimately led to our homelessness. So you're right. I know that there are stories, but there's also those personal stories of, you know, why I work at the council, why I started an organization, because I wanted the system to be different than what I came into it as. Because I saw what we needed to do and how we needed to do it and who we needed to at the table to do it with. So thank you so much for that. You talked about this a little bit, employment and inclusion, and what would be your plans to ensure that people with disabilities got job opportunities, but also to be included in the workplace.
Look, it's essential that people with disabilities not only have job opportunities, but they need to be paid fairly. They need to be compensated fairly. There's too much of a sense that, oh, I'm doing you a favor by giving you a job. If you're working, you need to be paid competitive wages. Some individuals with disabilities are able to stick up for themselves and negotiate for themselves. Others are not. And I'm going to work to end the unacceptable practice of sub-minimum wages for people with disabilities. Delaware should be a leader as an not just the first state, but employment first state, where people with disabilities have access to meaningful employment in both public and private sectors. We need to provide also employ we need to apply employers, companies, nonprofits, governments with incentives and resources to create accessible workplaces. And I'm going to work with advocacy groups that you know well, agencies like the Division of Voc Rehab, to make sure we support and not hinder people with disabilities in accessing employment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. You talked a little bit about this, like when you first started working and how you worked at the school. So of course, I had to have a question on education, right? It could be a conversation that we did, right?
That's
So
right.
my question about education, uh, how do you plan to ensure that students with disabilities receive the necessary individual supports, accommodations, and resources that they need to be successful?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Emmanuel. And it's really important. It's really important to so many families across our community. It's important to the vibrancy of our community as a whole. As a former teacher, I know firsthand that students with disabilities need individualized support to succeed. We need to invest in special education. We need to increase funding. We need to improve teacher to student ratios. And we need to address the shortage of special education teachers across our state. I think special ed should be equitable, particularly in schools serving children of color. It can't just be a stigma. Um, Students of color are often over-identified as needing special education services. I will ensure that our school systems are adequately funded and staffed so that all students with disabilities receive the support they truly need to succeed.
That was like short but so powerful. Well, if we could have ended it right there, we could all end it and keep moving.
It's funny you say that, man. My team tells me I can take one more question before I got a meeting in 2 minutes. I got to jump on. But I really appreciate this conversation, and I want to make sure we continue. This is not just a one-time conversation; it's a continued dialogue. We got to make sure you don't just talk to elected officials, and we don't just talk to you right before the election, but after the election and beyond. We continue working together to make sure people are protected and our community is made more inclusive and more vibrant.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna ask you one more question to give you time to make it to your next appointment.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. And the question that I have is in regards to LTSS, long-term support services, which includes home care, respite, and home nursing. What is your ideal plan or ideas that you may have to improve what those services look like for individuals with disabilities and their families, and how to support families to ensure that the families that are doing some of the work to make sure they get compensated correctly for taking on that work?
So I got news for you, Manuel. We're not in 1970 anymore. We're not in 1980. We're not even in 1990. It's 2024. And the way we deliver medical care needs to look like 2024. There are huge opportunities for people to remain in their home and receive the highest quality care, especially for individuals with mobility challenges who moving from place to place is hard. We often can save money and save both, your money and our taxpayer money, and provide higher quality service through home and respite care. But we need to improve long-term support services. It's not where it should be, especially for individuals with complex medical needs. A key part of this will be addressing workforce shortages in critical areas by increasing wages for direct service workers. To be honest, I'm encouraged. I've been very open and honest that I want Vice President Harris to win the presidency. And there are a lot of reasons why. One is the guy she's running against is kind of crazy. But I also am encouraged by a lot of her policy proposals. She has a policy proposal for Medicaid at home to ensure aging adults and people with disabilities have access to the care and services they need in their home and in their communities. That insurance funding obviously will be key to enabling it and enabling us to think creative and innovative ways to deliver quality, affordable care. Many families are unable to access the hours of support they're entitled to due to a lack of workers at established facilities. That's not acceptable. These are people that need the care. By raising pay and improving working conditions, we can ensure that individuals with disabilities receive the high quality care and support they need in their homes. I should add the Hope Center, which I talked about earlier, a couple years ago with Christiana Care, started a respite care center in the Hope Center. And now I believe it's the largest on-site, one of the largest on-site respite care centers in any homeless shelter in America. And so we're going to think in creative and innovative ways to make sure we're delivering care to people with disabilities who need care and do it in a way that's not overly burdensome or overly costly.
Absolutely. Thank you for putting that together so well. Matt, I want to thank you for taking your time out with me today. For those that are watching, make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell. Ring the bell so you never miss an episode. Matt Meyer, governor candidate for the state of Delaware. Thank you again for being here. And thank you all for watching. Until then, make sure that on November the 5th, no matter how you got to get there, plane, bus, train, or a boat.
Bicycle.
Bicycle, make sure you go vote. It is your right. It is also your destiny. And as I always say, vote like your life depends on it, because it absolutely does. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. It's great being here with the next Oprah Winfrey, Emmanuel Jenkins. Thank you very much.
Have a good day, sir.
You too. Bye-bye.